What's up, family? Welcome back to another episode of Patient X Holistic Healing. Today's video, we're going to talk about my views on Dharma, karma, reincarnation, the whole nine. So make sure you like and subscribe. If you like the video, if you want to support the channel, if you have anything to add to the conversation, please leave it down below in the comments. That's how we grow the community. If you haven't seen me before, my name is Professor X. I'll be a healing coach and spiritual teacher today. Without further ado, let's get right into this video. So first and foremost, I'm just gonna say it straight up. I don't believe in Dharma. I believe in it as a tool. I acknowledge it as having truth, but I don't believe it to be the truth. And here's why. When it comes to the soul is an infinite, abundant vessel of energy that is fueled by the higher spirit and thereby fueled by source. So the soul is free. The soul is not bound to anything. Yes, the soul experiences the laws of the universe, but the soul is not bound to the laws of the universe. The soul is the law of the universe, if that makes sense. So the way the soul moves naturally manifests itself to us as the 12 laws of the universe. I'm not going to go over all of them right now, but I'll probably make a video about that. That's like introductory metaphysics. If you want to see a video about that, let me know. But when it comes to the soul, like I said, the 12 laws and any other laws that are universal are just a product of the way that souls and higher energy moves. It's not necessarily something that the soul is bound to, right? So when we look at Dharma, the reason why people give credit to Dharma, at least in modern times, is because the law of cause and effect in the 12 laws of the universe. People commonly mistake karma for the law of cause and effect, and they're not the same thing. I'll link a video right here of my boy Genie. He talks about this in a video as well. He breaks it down very good. Go support the boy. But cause and effect and karma are two different things. Cause and effect is just saying that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Karma is saying whatever you do will happen back to you. And that is not true. Now, it has truth to it, but it's not the exclusive truth. It just means that the energy that I put out will come back to me in either a greater form or a lesser form. It doesn't even necessarily have to be equal when it comes to karma, because karma works in conjunction with other energetic universal laws where the energy ends up balancing out. When it comes to cause and effect, it's equal and opposite, you see, because cause and effect is a greater system. Karma is just one cog in that system where, I could give somebody $10, but maybe he gives to me $100 because I charged him interest. That's karma. But let's say I shot somebody and then I got shot and died later in my life. That's cause and effect. People would think that that is karma, and you could classify it as karma, but I would categorize that more as cause and effect because it's the equal opposite type of deal. But that example is not as common as people may think it is. If something goes up, yes, it has to come down. But the way we experience cause and effect in our lives is not so black and white. Because like I told you, we have karma playing a big role in the management of this energy. So like I told you earlier, karma is like a web. You feel me? All of these cause and effects are linked together and intertwining. Not everything is gonna be of equal value as we experience it karma wise. Literally, I could just spit on somebody for no reason and then I get shot because of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's karma. That's karma, but that's not equal opposite. I don't need to get shot for spitting on somebody. That's an overreaction, but it's still karma nonetheless. And the way that event plays into the grand scheme, plays into other events that I go through and experience, that's cause and effect. Maybe, I spat on somebody and they shot me, but before that, I also robbed somebody and then kicked a dog. Like, it's the way cause and effect is the way everything comes together. Equal opposite. Karma is more so on an individual basis. Cause and effect is more broad and universal. That's why it's a universal law. Now, let me get to Dharma, right? I don't believe in Dharma as a set in stone system because when it comes to karma and cause and effect, yes, you are bound to a reaction from your action. But that's only based off the law of cause and effect. Within Dharma, when you look at cause and effect instead of karma, you understand that it's just equal opposite energy. So if I do that in this life, then this naturally will happen to me in my next life. But what people don't understand is that I could take myself out of the equation completely. I don't have to relive an entire life just to balance out my old energy. I could move on to a higher state of being, which would technically be another life. But I mean physical incarnation. I could move on to a higher state of being where I'm not physical anymore and still receive that equal opposite energy. You see? So if let's say I commit a murder in this life, right? I don't have to die by murder in this life, nor do I have to get murdered in another life. All I have to do is experience the equal opposite effects of that. It could come in the form as many small things that happen over a long period of time, or it could just come as a certain event or task that I have to go through, right? Maybe because I killed somebody in this life, I have to be their spirit guide in my next life. But I'm not bound to physical incarnation. That's the thing with Dharma. They think that you are bound to this physical world, and that's not true. It's a complete decision to reincarnate on Earth. They have a lot of people stuck thinking that they are literally bound to this Earth through their karma, and that's not true. And that's what keeps you low vibrational, right? And a lot of this plays into judgment. You feel me? How we view ourselves after death. I have a whole video about this right here, but I'm really going to break it down better in this video, so you don't really got to watch that one. Now, in the spiritual community, we all know that when you die, your life flashes before your eyes. Many people, even people who aren't spiritual, report having an experience where they had a near-death experience and then they saw their life flash before their eyes as a movie, and then maybe they even tapped into higher senses, higher energetic bodies, and hear telepathy, all type of things. They hear other people's voices in the vicinity. Then they come back and literally report that and be like, yeah, there's something more to this physical world. And that is important because when you consider that movie, that flash before your eyes, that is you looking at your soul. That's you just observing your soul. To the untrained eye, when you look at the soul, you got to understand the soul is just memory. It's just energy and information that is configured within a vessel that can experience things. You see, it's consciousness that became conscious of itself. I make the comparison in another video, like your soul is basically a hard drive that you could plug into any reality in the universe or in the omniverse. This is important when observing the soul because, like I said, to the untrained eye, this is just going to look like pure information, pure data. So you're going to see the events, you're going to see the memories. You see, this is why when people die, they report seeing a light. This is why people report seeing a bright light when they die. They're seeing the magnificence of their being. But the importance lies in the movie. If you're watching the movie and the memories of your life and that makes you feel any type of lower vibrational or negative emotions, you start tapping into your etheric body and you feel weighed down based off what you're observing, you're going to spiral out and you're literally going to reincarnate into the physical or even a lower realm like purgatory, simply because you could not maintain a high vibration after death. Once you leave this physical body, like, you are sovereign. You feel me? Nothing can technically stop you from going and doing whatever you want to do, except your own frequency. A lot of people, especially humans, they watch their life flash before their eyes, they see the movie, and they don't like what they saw. So they literally lower their frequency on accident and get stuck in lower states of being. I know because my own experience, and I also know because my mentor, one of my mentors, he literally goes to this purgatory realm in these lower states of being, and he watches these people. All they do is relive the events that they don't like. They get stuck. It's like, when you do something bad and you can't stop thinking about it, that's basically the state that they're in, except they're a spirit. What my mentor does is he goes to these realms and frees these people. He literally just touches them and makes them realize that they are of higher nature, and he helps them separate the events from them, because you are not the events that you live through. All of this shit is just data and information at the end of the day. You can just look at it objectively like, oh yeah, it is what it is. And that's why people get stuck in states of reincarnation and states of purgatory, states of lower being, because they cannot rise their frequency above what they are experiencing. I will repeat myself. If you die, watch your life flash before your eyes, you don't like what you saw, you will get stuck in a reincarnation cycle. And this is just how it is. But if you keep a higher mentality, if you can just keep it objective and be like, oh yeah, I did that, but that's not me. That's just something that I express. That's just an aspect of myself, but I am greater. Once you acknowledge your greater energy and your greater potential, that shit does not matter anymore. That's why judgment only belongs in the mind. Judgment does not exist beyond the mind. I really need y'all to know this. Judgment does not exist beyond the mind. This is why when we tap into Christ consciousness, we rise above judgment and we can enter the gates of heaven. That's why in Christianity, Jesus says to get to the Father, you have to get through me. You have to get through Christ consciousness, which consists of not being judgmental. You have to leave the mind. The literal function of the mind is to compare this to this. That's how the mind works. Apples to apples. I can only know about this if I compare it to this, or if I compare it to this, or if I compare it to something else. You see what I'm saying? That's how the mind works. This to that. And that's how we learn about a bunch of things, by comparing everything else to everything else in the mind. But when you rise above the mind, you see this and you see how it relates to everything in existence. You see the whole thing in one thing, not just one thing to another thing. And that's the difference between the mind and the higher mind, or the abstract is what I like to call it, and the higher ways that you can receive and interpret information. Once you leave this physical, you could leave the mind and not have to worry about judgment. That's the only reason why people judge. When you compare this to that, that's literally judgment. And that's the foundation and basis for all judgment. That's why in that other video I mentioned, my main point was that God does not judge you. You judge yourself. So a lot of religions, they're stuck in this judgmental loop where they're judging each other and judging themselves, thinking that they're preparing themselves for God's judgment. Whole time, God does not care. You know how many beings and people live the most depraved lives, but then they find themselves and they rise above all of this shit? Literally, God in the Bible goes straight to sinners every time. Goes straight to sinners. He doesn't go to perfect people. He goes to sinners. The perfect people don't need him. It's the sinners who have to leave the mind and understand that you don't have to compare this to that. You don't have to have judgment. You could just see one thing and how it relates to everything. So if I die today and I look at my life flash before my eyes, I'm going to see my soul. I'm going to see my being, and I'm going to see these memories. If I could see how these memories relate to the entirety of existence, I will be able to move beyond the mental plane and I will be able to reach the Buddhic state. That's what traditional Dharma and Hinduism does not teach you. You have to not have judgment. You feel me? You don't have to think that you're bound. Once you even think that you're bound to something, that's a judgment right there. You're comparing yourself to a lower state of being. And then you're trying to protect yourself from that lower state of being by making a separation between the two. But you're actually not separate though. Once you leave that higher state, there will still be an aspect of yourself down there. And that's okay. When you find your completeness as a being, you learn to integrate all of these things seamlessly. Stop thinking that you're stuck or that you're bound to the physical world. That's what's keeping you bound to the physical world. Mind is everything, and really this mind is not shit. Once you rise beyond the mind, like I said, you don't have to be bound to anything except the Most High. The only difference between detachment and attachment is that people who are attached to things are attached to many things. But people who are detached and they find a way to escape the physical or any type of physical and spiritual toils, they can only do that because they're attached to one thing, and that is God, the Most High. They're attached to themselves. You see? So whatever road you want to take is up to you. But don't get the two confused. They're very similar paths, and they all lead back to the same place. That being said, man, I'm going to end it right here. I was straight to the point in this one. I like these aggressive style videos. I just upgraded the quality of my mic and shit, so we really finna be coming. You know, make sure you like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. If you learned anything, please share it with your friends who need to know this. If you have anything to add to the conversation, please leave it down below. That's how we enrich and grow the community. You feel me? And with that, my name is Professor X. I want to thank y'all for watching Patient X Holistic Healing, and I'm gonna catch y'all on the next one. Much love and blessings.